long been proud of its diverse ethnicity, cultures and spiritual beliefs. But recent attacks against minority groups like the Ahmadiyya sect and on Christian churches have many claiming that religious intolerance is on the rise here. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. On this edition of 101 East, we ask just what does religious freedom mean in multicultural Indonesia?
Outnumbered, police stand by as a mob attacks homes in Banten, West Java, Indonesia. They belong to Ahmadiyya, a sect who say they are Muslims, but who believe their founder was the final prophet rather than Mohammed. It's a belief that's deeply offensive to the vast majority of Indonesia's 209 million Muslims. But this amateur video showing the crowd stripping 3 Ahmadiyya men naked, stoning and beating them to death has shocked the nation. It is too gruesome to show here. The number of attacks against religious minorities in Indonesia has surged in the last year. As a result, Ahmadiyya followers in Lombok are to be forcibly moved to this almost deserted island nearby, a move the provincial government say is for their own safety. For Kai Rudin, it's the first time he's seen his potential new home.
Menurut saya terutama bagus lah.
I think the island looks comfortable.
Bagus, nyaman juga udara.
The air is fresh and I don't mind living here as long as facilities such as electricity and school is provided and safety as well. I'm excited.
Every moment is recorded for 200 sect members back home. The island's sole resident, whose job is to guard the palm trees, tells them on camera he's not happy with Ahmadiyya moving here. But these men have no home. In 2006, they were forced to abandon this village in Lombok when a neighbouring community forced them out. When some Ahmadiyya members tried to return late last year, their houses were looted. The movement's regional head says such incidents are rarely investigated.
Authorities haven't arrested any perpetrators of the attacks, and they don't actively try to solve the case. We had to report to the police station directly to get them to pursue the case. This shows authorities' lack of support and commitment to enforce the law.
Mungkinkah kau masih mengharapkanku?
22 Ahmadiyya families now live in this shelter in Lombok's capital, Mataram. Young and old crammed together in fetid makeshift tents. Kai Rudin says many here have been denied citizenship cards, which makes it hard for some children in the shelter to access Indonesia's education and health services.
To be honest, we don't like living here, but since this is a matter of defending our faith and beliefs, then we have to accept the conditions. We are forced to accept it.
The district head acknowledges his idea to move Ahmadiyya followers onto an island 60 kilometres away from Lombok is contentious, but says it's in their best interests.
Kita tidak memberikan solusi menyangkut juga hak asasi.
Perhaps the relocation solution could be seen as a violation of human rights, but for the local government it's a good solution. Why they're being isolated is because characteristically they're keen on an exclusive system of society.
Harmony is a selling point for an island trying to be a tourist mecca like neighbouring Bali. Zaini Roni says Ahmadiyya's exclusive and elitist approach to their faith triggers suspicion amongst mainstream Muslims.
It's affecting human beings in a harmful way. I do hope the central government would give a firm policy on a national level whether Ahmadiyya is allowed in Indonesia, because the ones who are directly facing the issues are the villagers and local government. This is the problem.
The Indonesian government's Religious Affairs Ministry issued a decree in 2008, banning Ahmadiyya from publicly practising and spreading their faith. They're reviewing the ban, but Bahrul Hayat, the Religious Affairs Ministry's Secretary-General, has serious misgivings on the Ahmadiyyah's exclusivity and says restrictions on marriage trigger social problems.
They have to be more open. There are some restrictions that given by Ahmadiyyas to other Muslim followers, like the use of masjid. All masjid in Indonesia is open for only Muslims. But the marriage system is restriction for only Ahmadis. Ahmadis women only want to be married by Ahmadis men. So this is some problem in terms of social interaction.
500,000 Ahmadiyya followers worship across Indonesia. Their detractors say they could have full religious freedom if they concede they are not true Muslims. But Indonesia's Ahmadiyya leaders maintain they are.
The basic essence of Islamic conversion vows. We practice it in other Islamic teachings. We pray facing the Kaaba. We fast during Ramadan.
Ahmadiyya's leadership meet once a month in the safety of a compound. Their spokesman says Indonesia should be more open-minded.
What we regret is our different interpretations should be talked through a dialogue. It's certainly not going to be resolved by physical attacks.
One of Indonesia's most prominent lawyers, Adnan Boyong Nasution, wants to take on Ahmadiyya's case. But that means also taking on Indonesia's mainstream Muslim bodies, who denounce them as heretical.
I doubt that they really dare to make a case against those people. I understand why, because they're afraid they became more angry, more aggressive, because they are bigger than Ahmadiyya. It's a very small group.
Indonesia's constitution guarantees freedom of religion in a nation where more than 85% of the population are Muslim. However, a blasphemy law currently enacted only recognises 6 official religions and imposes a 5-year jail term for any follower who strays away from their central tenets. There's another law that prevents minorities from building houses of worship without the support of 90 people. A minority of Indonesian hardliners have used the law to protest the building of churches and synagogues. Earlier in the year, violent attacks closed some 20 Christian churches, forcing at least one congregation to worship in the streets. The laws are also being used to justify attacks on religious minorities like Ahmadiyya. This amateur footage taken in 2008 near Riau in Sumatra shows an Ahmadiyya mosque being targeted by a local mob. High in West Java's hinterland, larger Ahmadiyya strongholds have also been under attack. Scorched floors and burnt Qurans remind the village head Mubarak Ahmed of last September's attack on the mosque, madrasa and surrounding houses.
They didn't only throw stones, but also Molotov cocktails, causing the mosque to burn. The carpet was burned. The young people tried to put out the fire and mistakenly thought to fight back. Then the attackers ran away and one person got stabbed.
The community are rebuilding the mosque, but they are adamant it will happen again because tension remains high.
We find that some authorities are not neutral. They seem to be defending the other party. We have reported the threats and they claim that the attackers blocked them and couldn't get through, and they are the ones who should control the public and keep order, not the other way around.
But despite their issues with Ahmadiyya, the government says authorities do what they can to protect Ahmadiyya communities.
We always ask the police to do what the law have to do to anybody who distract and break the law. But again, sometimes there are some constraint that the police cannot get the very clear and very comprehensive report.
Back on the island, Khairuddin has a lot to consider. The group will only get facilities here if they sell their assets. He will need to source fresh water for his family and find a boat to work. But what this island does provide is a safe place to live.
Despite the hard times of having to move and having our houses destroyed, it's nothing compared to staying true to our faith. Our relations with God shouldn't be disturbed.
Coming up after the break, we ask if religious intolerance is on the rise here in Indonesia. Stay with 101 East. Welcome back to 101 East. This week we come to you from the Istiqlal Grand Mosque in Jakarta. After a recent spate of attacks against minority religious groups, we're asking if religious intolerance is on the rise here in Indonesia. Joining us on the panel now is Muhyiddin Junaidi from the Indonesian Council of Clerics.
Yes.
Also Andreas Harsono from Human Rights Watch. Thank you very much for being with us
Most
today.
welcome.
Muhyiddin, if I could start with you. Indonesia has been held up as an example of a mainly or a majority Muslim nation that's moderate and embraces diversity and democracy. But does religious freedom actually exist here?
Yes, definitely. Right from the time of Indonesian independence, our country has been enjoying religious freedom. As a matter of fact, though we represent majority, the Muslim, but we never claim that we are majority, and there is no state religion. We have got 6 recognized religion. It's quite different from Malaysia and United Kingdom, for example, where they adopt the system of state religion. This indicates that we enjoy full freedom in this country, and we also enjoy religious tolerance. What happened recently, it is indeed just misunderstanding. It has nothing to do with religious freedom in our country.
Andreas, would you agree that it's merely a misunderstanding and nothing to do with religious intolerance in Indonesia?
I have to admit that it is not. That by design, there are problems in this country. Let me give some figures. Over the last 6 years, since President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono in power, there are more than 240 churches being closed down, and some were burned down using violence. And over the last 10 years, there were 10 Ahmadiyya mosques which are also being closed down using violence.
Well, let me ask you, why then? Why is this rise of attacks against these minority religious groups?
I think because there are 2 things. First, there is a rise of fundamentalism worldwide, not only in Indonesia, also in Europe, also in the United States. Secondly, because there is a tolerance, there is no action against mobs, against people who conduct violence. They are not arrested, they are not investigated, they are not jailed.
Muhyiddin.
Yes, as a matter of fact, why the churches were closed down? The government of Indonesia have got their own rule and regulation. If any Muslim or any followers of religion wanted to build a house of worship, they have to follow that kind of rule. For example, our Christian brothers, if they want to build a church, they have to collect at least now 90 persons. In addition to that, they have to get approval from 60 members of the society that can support the plan of the house of worship as a church.
Let me just stop you there and ask Andreas, what do you think of this? I mean, Muhyiddin is saying that this is merely a misunderstanding, that these churches were built illegally. Is that the case?
Well, there are some which did not get the legitimate signature. But there are many who got all of the signature, who got all of the permit, but still they are being closed down because of mob attacks. The thing is, no one was arrested for attacking churches.
This mob that you're talking about, who are they and why hasn't there been any action against them?
Oh, they are using a lot of organizations, the Defenders of Islam Front. There are many organizations, militias, they are armed, they are violent, they are burning places, they are attacking priests, etc., etc.
Muhyiddin, I see you nodding. You would agree that there have been attacks against minority religious groups. It's not merely a misunderstanding, is it?
Honestly speaking, we, Indonesia, is well known as the paradise of religious tolerance. Regarding the Ahmadiyyas, you know, Ahmadiyya we consider is non-Muslim right from the beginning. Because even in the birthplace of Ahmadiyya is considered as a minority non-Muslim group.
But surely they must be allowed to be to worship. They must be allowed to do what they want.
They are given freedom to practice their own religion, provided they don't take the name of Islam.
Who are you to say what is Islam and what is not Islam?
Of course, like
there are different sects of Islam, isn't there? There are different branches.
I don't agree to say that sects. We have got only different school of thought. It's not sect.
And is the Ahmadiyya a different school of thought?
Ahmadiyya is not school of thought. Ahmadiyya is a kind of faith, whereas they have already tarnished the teaching of Islam itself. Therefore, we never agree to somebody who claim themselves Muslim, but they violate the teaching of Islam.
You're talking about the Ahmadiyya sect here, but what about the burning of the mosques? What about attacks against Jewish synagogues?
Those who burn and attack the house of worship, they deserve to be given a punishment by the government.
Would you agree with Andreas that there is a rise in fundamentalist Islam here in Indonesia?
No, I to a certain extent, I don't agree with him, because he has got a full right to say that. What happened right now, there are so many factors behind the mob and violence. Say, for example, economic or political factors and so forth. So you just cannot blame that because of the group of radical, and I could say those who use Islam as the pretext to attack somebody. In fact, they have nothing to do with Islam itself. Islam is the teaching of peace.
The Constitution allows for 6 main religions here.
Not the
in
Constitution.
Indonesia.
It was only a presidential decree made in 1965 by President Sukarno.
And that allows for 6 main religions here in
Yes.
Indonesia. Is it right that the state be allowed to dictate how people worship and what they worship?
I don't think the state should do that. That's why I said that by design, Indonesia is flawed, because its constitution says that there is religious freedom. But its president said that there are only 6 recognized religions. What does it mean? It means that other faiths are considered to be secondary citizens, secondary faith, to be compared with the 6th religion. And of course, there are other regulations, like the anti-Ahmadiyya June 2008 regulation. There is also this, well, they call it house of worship regulation, but in fact, it only affects the Christian churches or other minority religions. It does not affect when people building a mosque, they don't necessarily take so many signatures that have to be submitted by the neighboring areas.
Muhyiddin, what is your reply?
No, I don't think so. Even we Muslim, if we want to build a mosque, we need to get approval from those who live around the area. See, Brother Andreas, if Muslim live in, for example, Bali Island, where we are minority there, we just cannot build a mosque unless we get approval from those people who live in the area. At least we have to follow the rule and regulation.
Most Muslims in Indonesia live on the island of Java. 62% live on the island of Java. But other islands like Borneo, like Sulawesi, like Papua, they are much bigger islands. The native are predominantly Christians. And we rarely heard about mosques being burned, being attacked in those predominantly Christian areas.
So you're saying that many of the attacks mainly happen in majority Muslim areas?
If we take a look at the pattern, the most violence usually taking place in Western Java. There is historical reason for that, because this area used to be the enclave of the Darul Islam movement, which was trying to establish Indonesia as a Sharia-based country.
I want to talk about something that you raised a little earlier on. You talked about the Ahmadiyya perhaps being moved to a certain island apparently for their own protection. Do you think this is a good move for them?
Of course not. You cannot move people by force. You cannot move people out of their family members. friends, job, market, school for the children, etc., etc. So it is inhuman.
Muhyiddin, what do you think?
I don't agree at all, because as far as Islamic teaching is concerned, we are not allowed to force somebody to follow our faith. What we are objecting right from the beginning is the practice of our brothers from Ahmadiyya who still claim themselves as Muslims. See, for example, if you are Hindu or if you are Christian and somebody else claim themselves Christian, but they violated the teaching of Christianity and Hinduism, do you want to keep quiet? Do you agree or not? That's the reason. Therefore, the best solution.
Then that if the Ahmadiyya sect came out and said, all right, we will now admit that we are not part of the Islamic religion, we are in fact a whole different religion, that these attacks against them will stop?
Definitely. We have given two options. One is Ahmadiyya, they form their own religion, the name Ahmadiyya religion. Or they return to the teaching of Islam, the genuine teaching of Islam. If they accept this, we can guarantee there no more attack, no more war against
Who
Ahmadiyya.
is to say, who then dictates what is the genuine teaching
of course,
Islam? How can the state dictate that this is the branch
the state,
of Islam that
the government
the country
of
has to
Indonesia
follow?
does not have any right to force. But
No, but the
every
Council
religion,
of Ulama don't they?
it's not the Council of Ulama. Every religion has their own reference. So Islam, of course, based on Al-Quran and the tradition of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. As long as those people do not follow these reference, of course, we consider that they are not part of Muslim.
Just finally, gentlemen, do you think it is actually possible to maintain religious harmony here in multicultural Indonesia? Muhyiddin?
Yeah, definitely. It is no doubt that we Indonesian people enjoy religious freedom right from the time of our independent days. Only recently there are minor cases, I could say.
Andres, how do you think religious harmony can be maintained here in multicultural Indonesia?
There should be a radical change of the mindset of many religious leaders in Indonesia. If not, violence after violence will keep on continuing breaking out in Indonesia. I'm not only talking about burning churches, I'm talking about killing people, killing hundreds, thousands of people in the name of their respective religion.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. That's all the time we have for this edition of 101 East. You can always follow the program through our website, podcast and Facebook. From all the team here in Jakarta, Indonesia, thanks for watching.